Call this meeting to order. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of Nanaimo. Welcome, everybody. I'll be in the position of chair as Trustee Higginson is away today.
She's on the phone, right?
But she is on the phone. That's correct. Thank you. So at this time, just wondering if anybody has any additions for the agenda. Seeing none. Any deletions? Any change in order? Seeing none. We can have a motion to approve the agenda. Or do we have to do that? Moved by Trustee Ray, seconded by Trustee Solomon.
All in favor?
All in favor? We have a motion to approve the minutes for October 24th. Trustee Brustvich, seconded by Trustee Ray. Tonight we're going to have a presentation by...
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you didn't call for the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
All in favor for the minutes? Thank you.
I suspected it would be unanimous, but
Yes.
just in case.
Thank you. Tonight we're going to have a presentation by Executive Director Crystal Dennison. If you can... Oh, she does?
I'm here, but it's actually Ed Foley.
Okay, Ed Foley.
Ed Foley.
Okay. Ed Foley, if you could rise.
Thank you, Trustee Bob. And thanks to you all for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. And I also want to thank you for the strong support that we received from you folks. So as you know, the Nanaimo Ladysmith Schools Foundation and its partnership with Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools is unique in BC. It's a partnership that we value greatly, and it's one that I feel has allowed us to accomplish a lot. We exist to support students, and I feel that our objectives align well with those of the school board, and particularly with your efforts to address child poverty. So what I'll do this evening very quickly is provide you with a quick update of what we've done over the past year and highlight some of our plans for the coming year. Our efforts at the foundation are focused on three main program areas: scholarships and bursaries, student support programs to assist students in need, and enhanced learning initiatives to promote youth leadership and community involvement. In the area of scholarships and bursaries, we received and distributed $360,000 in donations, and we administered Ministry District Dogwood scholarships in the amount of $157,000. So in total, we awarded over $517,000 in awards to graduating students in Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools. In the area of student support programs, we continued to expand our successful Stock the Lockers fundraiser in partnership with Staples and Coast Community Credit Union. And we introduced a new fundraising initiative in the form of spring and Christmas craft markets held at NDSS. So donations and in-kind support enabled us to provide over 62,000 breakfasts and lunches to students in Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools. It enabled us to provide school supplies to over 900 students, including 24 children of recently arrived Syrian immigrants. It enabled us to pay the fees for numerous students to allow them to attend school events and field trips. We provided athletic footwear to over 100 students to allow them to participate in school athletic activities. And we provided assistance to students in need of dental or vision care that we couldn't afford. In the area of enhanced learning initiatives, we were able to partner with the RCMP Strategic Prevention Services in presenting the Yes to No Youth Empowerment Conventions, which enabled over 2,000 students in grades 7 to 9 to attend a full-day convention to enable them to make better choices, better healthy lifestyle choices. We were able to launch the Enhanced Learning Grants program, which is funded by contributions from you folks to your Trustee Legacy Fund. These grants supported things like a robotics club, a maker space, and a reading enhancement program. We were also able to secure grant funding to purchase the Inspire software program to support the work of the Career Technical Center. All of this work is coordinated by our excellent staff, Crystal Dennison and Sandra Scott, that we enjoy courtesy of our partnership with you folks. And our work is also strongly supported by district staff, and I'd really like to extend my sincere personal thanks to John Blaine and to Dale Burgos and his team for their ongoing support, and in particular with their assistance this summer with our move from our old digs at Barsby to our new location at NDSS. So over this coming year, we'll of course continue to focus on our 3 program areas, and we'll be undertaking some new initiatives. In the area of fundraising, we will be launching a planned giving initiative, as well as delivering a number of boardroom presentations aimed at increasing corporate sponsorship. We will be expanding our in-school meal program in partnership with the food bank, and we'll be increasing the number of schools we support. We will be supporting the Career Technical Center and the private sector in the implementation of the Inspiring Career Connections program, aimed at improving the links between business and schools and supporting the transition of students from school to the workplace. And we will also be launching a Friends of the Foundation initiative to expand our engagement with the broader community and increase the number of folks who volunteer with our organization. So in a nutshell, that's me, that's us. And again, I just want to thank you very much. We couldn't do what we do without the support we get from the community and from the board and from district staff, so thank you very much.
Just want to say thank you for sharing all of that valuable information, and it's the work that you do is just so important, so thank you. So we have some questions and comments from, we'll start with Trustee Bostich.
Through the chair, Mr. Pulley, you were mentioning expanding your breakfast and lunch programs. How many schools are you guys involved with now? And can you tell me a bit about how that program runs?
We're up to 15 now?
14 schools.
We're up to 14. It's something we do in partnership with the schools. We're in a bit of transition now with changes. I think if you let Crystal, she can speak to that in quite detail.
Yeah, sure. We partner with the Breakfast Clubs of Canada is one of our primary sponsors for the breakfast program, as well as our own initiatives for raising funds. And so we provide food and incidentals for 14 school breakfast programs. We've also started bringing in food bank food that's been recovered through the food bank, where we're able to access food that's still good food, and bringing it into the schools. There's a lot of schools that we are providing egg coupons, juice coupons, yogurt. So we have twice a month we have free yogurt that's donated directly through Danyon that's brought into the schools. And then as needed through individual requests from the schools. We're really working a lot with Wellington School this year. They're doing smoothies, and so we're providing support for them as well. Yeah, so
Rock City?
Rock City.
Yeah,
so there's Rock City, if I see if I can go through all of them, Brecon, Bayview, Georgia Fairview, Rock City, Pleasant Valley, Forest Park, Georgia Avenue, Wellington, NDSS, John Barsby. We have requests in from Gabriola, Ladysmith, Cedar, Dover, which are all ones that were sort of a work in progress based on how much funds we can access and what level of support we can provide.
I know, speaking to Ms. Brother Rock City program, it's been greatly appreciated. Like, I know that we're getting sandwiches pre-made that are coming. I don't know who's
That's not us.
That's not you?
That's not us, no.
Okay.
That's through Nanaimo Food Charity.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what, okay.
Yeah, that they're doing, yeah.
Okay.
So I think they could bring into a couple of schools.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so when I'm working with Superstore is one of our latest partners that we're working with over the last couple of months, and I just found out today actually that they're doing a new granting formula, a new system of the way that they're providing funding, and it goes directly into community organizations supporting locally. So rather than Superstore providing to a national, a lot of times these organizations donate to Food Banks Canada, and then the funding is trickle down. It actually doesn't end up necessarily supporting kids in the schools with food programs. So they are changing that. So there'll be a new granting round in March that we'll be looking at as well. So, and other grocers that are donating food items. So basically what we're trying to do is stretch the resources that we have as far as we can and make it as easy as possible for at the school end to be able to just provide food, understanding the constraints of staffing. And
Trustee Wright?
My chocolate bar and chip initiative hasn't been getting a lot of traction, unfortunately.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to you guys. You know, you had mentioned that you couldn't do it without us. Well, we couldn't do what we do without you. You guys have made an incredible impact on this city, and we're in a better place because of all the hard work that all of you put in. And we cannot thank you enough. But I guess my question, and I think everybody should know, if they don't, how bullish we all are about the work that you guys do and how we can take it to the next level. So I guess if I had a question, it would be, what can we do as board members to help support you take this to the next level?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, it's keep doing what you're doing. I mean, there was a time not that long ago when our funding support from the district was at question. It's great. We're getting solid support. We could always use more. I mean, you look at the quality of the staff we have, but we still only have 2 of them. What they're able to do with the limited resources. So, any chance for more resources would be very welcome. But just the continued support, the marketing, what we do as we get into these new initiatives, boardroom presentations and planned giving. There may be opportunities for the board to support us and to help us market ourselves in the community. So
Please keep.
we won't be shy about asking.
Please don't be shy. Thank you. Thanks.
Trustee Solomon?
Yeah, I think we're all amazed at the amount of work that your organization does and how you fill the gaps. And there are large gaps in our system. How you're able to do that, and with only a few people, and networking, incredible networking to be able to pull that together. So it is incredible work. And I did see your new digs there, and it's a small office, but boy, the amount of work that goes through the 2 staff and that is.
I just came from there, and there's how big is that stack of, I don't know, there's a stack of letters this high and this wide, all going out thanking donors for scholarships, and just like the amount of paper is amazing.
So I did have one question. One of the things that was said to me is that it's one of the most difficult things is actually to get a sandwich to a kid. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm nodding my head big time. It is. It's very difficult, and the reason why is a big question mark. I always just say it's kind of messy. Each you know, there's such a will on one end to want to feed kids, but without the financial resources, possibly the space to create the food, the vehicles to drive the food, or the staffing to make the food, is really difficult. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. We see the requests coming in from every school across the district, and they just, you know, they don't have the staffing. We don't have the people in place to make food, to even if there was money to bring food. So I guess that's the role that the foundation's really taking seriously, is making it as easy as possible. So when we have an EA at a school that only has an hour to make food, that they get what they need so they can do their job to get that food to the kids. So that's the approach that we've taken, and it's not consistent throughout the district. So some schools, depending on the level of need, have more resources available than others. So we really try and address those individual school requests and do what we can to bring in food where it's most needed. So to prevent, because you know, we hear stories of teachers running out and buying granola bars and you know, all sorts of things like that. So so it's tricky. And
the reality
the question
too is,
comes down to who's responsible for feeding kids, right? So it's not, I look at the school district, and it's not the responsibility. I mean, it's a shared responsibility, I suppose. So yeah.
you know, I mean, sandwiches specifically, sandwiches are labor intensive. If you ever try and,
It's
you know,
logistics, yeah.
when you look at even for service clubs, when you're looking at your meal options, you're always, well, sandwiches are no cheaper because sandwiches are labeled. You can hard boil a ton of eggs and hand them out with granola bars, but making sandwiches takes people to make them, and that's why it's not us doing the sandwiches. It's these groups that can pull together enough volunteers to get together on that day to make a whole bunch of sandwiches.
I sit on a couple of network groups that to look at this and to try and to support the schools and making sure that they have the resources available and they know where they can access support as well. Yeah, and I don't think we're unique. There's, it's happening across the province, it's happening across the country. We don't have a universal food program in this country, and so on a national level with Food Secure Canada, and there is work being done to petition government for national food, school food policy, and looking provincially, there is movement to put pressure on government to put food on the table. But the reality is right now we have a lot of kids showing up to school every day without food. So somebody has to do it, and so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Trustee Brennan?
The new government has a goal to reduce poverty in British Columbia. In fact, they've set up a secretariat for it. And I hope you will be able to provide us with some data that we can forward to that group and just explain how dire the
Great.
situation is in our school district and how
Yeah, absolutely. No, that we can-
like there to be a significant reduction in poverty and need in this district.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one thing we'll be able to do for sure, because with us in the network in the schools, we're where the rubber meets the road on that, so we know. And I think that's one thing too, that's about the partnership, the way our money flows, it flows discreetly through the staff, so it's directed to students that need it, but in a way that, so if a kid's on a field trip, nobody knows whether that kid paid for themselves or we paid for them, that kind of stuff. And so I think we get really good support from the staff in the schools, but because of that relationship, I think we'll be able to provide stuff for you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. So if there's no further questions, just want to say heartfelt thanks for all of the work that you do. Thank you for coming
Thank
in.
you.
Thank you.
I just had one more comment. I like to just leave every time I present with an invitation to anybody to, if they have ideas or information that they'd like to share or questions or concerns, that I have open door policy. So please contact me, email, stop by the office and see me. And we're always, looking for new ways to do things better and to do more with what we have. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So before we move along, I'd like to just say feel free to leave if you wish.
Something you said? Was it something you said?
No sandwiches.
Yes.
They do a good job.
They're incredible.
And a lot
Okay,
better
so
since I
moving
started.
along on our agenda, down to 8.1, we'll be discussing reconciliation. And I guess we'll be focusing on our trustee responses on this topic. We recently had some events and gatherings on this very important topic, and here we are, ready to discuss next steps, and our staff is eager to hear what we have to say. So thank you for being a part of the conversation. So I guess we'll start our speakers list. Who would like to start? Trustee Robinson.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's very easy to say we support reconciliation. And then you start to think, what the heck do we mean by that? We're educators, so obviously it involves educating Aboriginal students and others. I think with Aboriginal students, it's important that, first of all, we focus on building pride in language and culture. That leads to a growing self-confidence, and with self-confidence, a positive vision of where they can go, and without that vision, they're not going to continue to move forward. So language and culture, I think, is very important, especially in K-3, where I think kids are more flexible, more open, ready to get involved in that. I would like to see us working to have more elders in the school. I'm becoming more and more aware every year. I work with the Spuptidal and other Aboriginal programs that we need to be connecting with our elders. And those are the main ones, obviously, to ensure that we spend even more time teaching Indigenous history, literature, arts, leadership skills. That's what I got off the top.
Thank you. Trustee Sullivan?
Yeah, I think that we've taken some steps in terms of understanding how we got here and understanding the issue. And you're saying, well, you know, reconciliation, like what do you do with that? And understanding the issue is the first step. And taking the steps to actually make a difference, I think we can be part of that. But I wanted to, this is a long, tough process, and we're going to see the fallout from some of the issues that have occurred for generations and generations for a long time. And I wanted to read just a very, very brief thing from, I just pulled this out of the paper. I think this is, you may or may not know this, but I think it's important to understand where we're at. Indigenous preschoolers account for more than half of all Canadian children aged 4 and under who are in foster care, a number that has put renewed pressure on Ottawa. Well, maybe so. But less than 8% of all Canadian kids aged 4 and under are First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, but Indigenous children accounted for 51% of preschoolers in foster care. First Nations children alone counted for 41.4% of all children in care. And when we talked about, you know, the schools and taking kids away and putting them in residential schools, the concern was that yes, we don't have residential schools anymore, but we have many, many children of Indigenous background in foster care. And it's a similar type of vein in terms of where we're at, and we need to be able to resolve that somehow. So we're going to see the fallout, but we play a key role in this, and it's going to take time. But even services like, you know, Natasha's involved with Kwame Leland and ASMA is a recognition that we need to do things differently in our society. It used to be that it was very, very simple. We came, you know, from MCFD background. We came in a nuclear family. Well, if it bombed out a nuclear family, well, the kid has to go somewhere else. But we've come a ways and said, listen, okay, maybe there's issues in a nuclear family, but there's an extended family that may be 50 people in extended family that may be able to partake in this process and be able to help with these children. I don't know all the answers for sure. I think we've taken a step in terms of recognizing the issue, and that's an important step. And now some of the things that Bill has talked about and some of the things that we're doing in the school district are the next steps in a long, long, difficult process. Thank you. Sorry, a little bit longer, but anyway, thank you.
Well, you have 50
Natasha, can you put me on the list, please?
For sure.
I'll say a little bit. I'm still learning, so this is still very, I mean, I did the blanket exercise I was invited to do the blanket exercise at departure-based school, gosh, 2 years ago, I think. I'm looking over at Carl, probably he'll have to remember.
I don't have any better memory than you.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago-ish. And that was incredibly moving. An incredible growth experience for me to really personalize it and really understand it on more of a deeper, meaningful, more cellular type level. Speaking, obviously not as an indigenous person, but speaking as a member of a minority group, as a person with a disability, there's this part of me that says it doesn't matter what I think reconciliation means. It matters what the people who have been the victims of all these hundreds of years of racism, how they see it. And for me, it's a question of finding a respectful, safe way of asking kids, of asking parents, how do we make our schools better? How do we make this a place where you feel as much valued and as much an equitable, equal part of our schools as people who aren't Indigenous? And I don't know what that looks like yet, because I can certainly tell you that when I was 8 years old, when somebody tried to do that, it actually backfired. So it actually made it more uncomfortable for me because I didn't have the tools to know what, So I don't know. I know that what Trustee Robinson said about mentors in the schools, we were down in Souk for a VISTA meeting a year or so ago, and they talked about their mentorship program. And I think it goes a lot deeper than some of the things that we have with our elders in schools. I would love to explore that. That's the most immediate thing that comes to my mind.
Trustee Higginson.
Hi, this is a strange format for me, so I apologize. It feels very disconnected for me right now. But I took a bit of a different stance to answering this question from Trustee Solomon and Trustee Robinson, and that is, thinking about, I'm not sure that I'm quite where they're at in terms of an operationalizing of this process. For me, the first thing that I want to express is gratitude to all the members of our staff and our school community who showed so much vulnerability at our last meeting. I think that environment is what is so important to moving forward in this process. And I think that what we're trying to do here, our goal here is trying to be eloquent in the phone, on the speakerphone. It's to, our goal at the end of this is to amend a wrong, and it's not just any wrong, but it's a deeply immoral wrong. And I'm hoping, my hope for next steps is that we walk through this process together in a way that doesn't make people feel like we're trying to just move through, ignoring the wrong, but, rather reconciling our past in a way that allows us to cultivate a dialogue that's based on cooperation and developing deeper relationships, so that we can confront the injustices of the past and build relationships for the future. And so in terms of next steps, I think, having attended the equity scan process last week, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that process to deeply inform how we move forward on this, but also for our process to inform the next steps in the equity scan. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to have those two processes, or these two processes, merged together in a meaningful way. But I also think that we need to be a bit more public about this, and for this to start to move outside of the boardroom. The most meaningful thing that we've done so far was the blanket exercise at the retreat in the summer, and seeing the impact this has had on our immediate community, I think, is important to note. And I think maybe utilizing the facilities that we have to do this again in a larger setting for our school communities, any members of our community who want to participate in it, doing that doing a blanket ceremony for the public at NDSS. I know VIU just did one, and I think it would be great for us to do one open to all members of our community. And I think also arranging dialogues between ourselves and our Indigenous partners, meeting with Chief and Council of our land-based Indigenous partners, and finding something that's just as culturally significant for our urban Aboriginal and our Mid-Island Métis partners. And I think we also need to continue hearing the truth a little bit. I don't think we're quite there yet with reconciliation. I think that there's still people in our community who have a truth they want us to hear. And so arranging a way for people to express their truth to us, specifically our students and our staff and members directly of our community, I think is important. And I also think a next step for us is a deeper analysis of the educational calls to action of the TRC. And on that, like, not just the educational calls, but maybe all 93 recommendations, and see where we intersect with them. That's all I got so far.
Trustee Ray?
Thank you. This is obviously a deeply personal issue for a lot of people, and it's touched a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And, you know, it's interesting listening to everybody's comments, and Trustee Brozovic, one thing that you said that I caught, you know, you went through a blanket ceremony a couple of years ago and it changed you profoundly. And I think that anybody who's had the opportunity to be part of something like that has a new appreciation for what our First Nations partners have had to go through in their lives. But I'm respectful of the fact that that is a highly personal and private journey, and I don't think that it should be something that should be any less than that. And I guess for next steps for me, I would want to ask our First Nations partners how far they think we've come, if we've come anywhere at all, and what they feel like our next steps should be. Because this is something that we need to do together, and you know, taking the first step is the hardest, and you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And I think we've done a pretty good job on our board of acknowledging it, but like Trustee Higginson had said, I think there's a lot of people in the public who haven't taken that step, and I see that as one of our biggest challenges in front of us, is trying to educate the public of what actually happened and where we need to go from there. Again, I look forward to hearing from our partners who took part in this and seeing where they feel we are and what they feel our next steps should be. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, if not, then I'll just share some of my thoughts. And it mirrors a lot of what has already been said, for sure. And I guess my comments are really, first off, to say continue to do what we are doing already. There's been a lot of foundational work by previous school board for our district, and our staff has a long history of working and collaborating with our local First Nations. What comes to mind for me is a focus on looking at those numbers, our success rates, and really trying to address where there are concerns, for sure, and really changing the trajectory for our Aboriginal learners in our district, and kind of realizing the challenges that they face within their own communities, knowing that a lot of First Nations and local First Nations communities really struggle living in the reserve system, small isolated communities, even though they're adjacent to the beautiful city of Nanaimo, still very socially isolated, and face transportation barriers, face social barriers, and to success. I think that some of the comments that really resonated from my fellow trustees, you spoke about the partnerships that we have within the community and finding ways to strengthen them and to make them even better. I think that's possible, and it feels like we've been doing a lot of the same things with regards to decision making and planning in much the same way for many years, and I think it would be good to explore other ways to bring everybody together and collaborate. I really like the discussion about mentors and elders in our schools, and they already are there, and we know that those mentors are so valuable to our students, and I really like that idea. Really, what comes to mind for me is looking at the resources that are available. There have been some really amazing language resources made in partnership with the school district that really did work to save Halkamenim in this area, and the First Nations communities have benefited from that in itself. But there's more. I think it was an unfinished project that could probably really help our educators and our students, as well as our communities. And really using the data that we have at our disposal and finding ways to spend a bit more time to really look at some of those finer details of how our, like comparing success rates for Aboriginal female students versus Aboriginal male students, and seeing, really just trying to identify where the problems are stemming from. That's what comes to mind for me. And I guess the final thing is really just being very mindful of vicarious trauma, vicarious perpetrator notions, because when we talk about these very difficult subjects, it really has an impact on your mind, body, and spirit. And then, you know, putting yourself in the place of a student, we don't want them going home carrying those feelings. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that people are aware of there are ways from a Coast Salish perspective anyhow to take care of those feelings in a good way. And so those are my thoughts. I don't know if there's any others. Trustee Brennan? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I grew up in North Vancouver, traditional territory of the Squamish people, and went to school with a lot of First Nations students. And one of the leaders of the Squamish Nation was Chief Joe Mathias, who, to the pain and dismay of politicians and corporate interests, was able to resecure the cutoff lands that were taken from the Squamish people many years ago, and which included Park Royal Shopping Centre and Ambleside Park, worth millions of dollars. So, I mean, I see that as righting a wrong and making a success. That is one of the most well-off First Nations in British Columbia right now. The other side of that is visiting Kakwas, which is a treatment center. I'm not sure if it's still open, for First Nations families experiencing substance abuse problems, and it's on Mears Island. And my wife was on the board of the Nanaimo Youth Services, and they took it upon themselves to construct a playground for kids on that site. So we drove up to Fino and took a fish boat across to Kakwas, and in a moment of downtime, I went wandering around the site and came across the graveyard. And walking through it was a very, very sad experience, because there were markers that showed kids dying at the age of 9 years old and 12 years old, and away from their families. So, I mean, that gave me a sense of the pain and I guess, despair that families experienced during those times of the residential schools. So, and I have no way of knowing what that's like. Because that was a whole civilization that was nearly destroyed. The population of First Nations people in British Columbia went from over 200,000 to 25,000 in the 1920s, caused mostly by actions of the non-Native people, non-Indigenous people. Alcohol, smallpox, all sorts of diseases that were unknown on the West Coast until we got here. And almost decimated the population and the culture, stealing cultural artifacts, and not letting the children speak literally their native tongue. So I would like to, and I think this is a one step, because it says next steps. So I don't think we're going to fix things tonight. But I think one thing we need to do is we need to know what reconciliation looks like to First Nations people. What will it look like? How will we be sure that we've done the necessary things, made necessary changes to gain your trust, to be responsible for your children? And that is a huge area, and that's one that we're finding now. Many First Nations are abandoning the public school system. They're setting up their own schools on their reserves, Or we're seeing in the Nanaimo Aboriginal Center a sort of a urban-based First Nations education. So we're in a struggle. I mean, to gain that trust and to be able to maintain a level of attendance and to our public schools amongst those people. If we don't very soon regain that trust, there won't be any First Nation students in our schools. That's how it will be resolved. So that's the first thing, is we need to meet, and I know staff have been trying to arrange meetings, but we have to determine in a determined way, see that if we want reconciliation, we have to meet face to face with their leadership and find out what the steps we need to take look like. And there may be formal means of reconciling. You think of a feast. You know, there's a shame feast. We could perhaps sponsor a shame feast. I don't think I'd want to call it that, but more of a celebratory occasion when we could agree that we've achieved something in the area of reconciliation. And there are more informal ways. Use of elders is one. Visiting the reserves as a board to meet on a regular basis to find out what's happening and are there issues of concern and how can we address those. So I see this as being ongoing and not resolved in the short term, but through a lot of energy and a lot of commitment and trust, because that's, I think, lacking in some areas. Regaining that trust and reconciling. You know, we know what happened in the past, and most of us weren't here when that happened. But, you know, from the moment that, Columbus landed on the shores of Hispaniola and started murdering people and taking them back as sort of objects of curiosity to Europe, it went down from there. So.
Thank you, Trustee Brennan. Is there something you wanted to say?
To the chair, sure.
Sure. Bill.
Thank you.
I wanted to make comments.
Trustee Brennan beat me to a little bit of it, but as the board was speaking, I was trying to separate out some of your thoughts around, what's involved by staff and what's involved by board, and I hit on the trust piece of my understanding and knowledge just of the school district over the years is how do we build up that trust so that we're in a relationship where we're co-partners moving forward, and it's a piece that has broken down over the past years, and so that will be slow in coming, but I do see that as a major piece. I think we've created what many educators or leaders would state as the blanket ceremony has created a sense of urgency for us and recognition of the reasons why we need to do something. So then we need to kind of ask, before we can go on to do the what are we going to do about it, we need to grow our understanding, and the understanding isn't in this room right here. The understanding is out there in our schools, in our partner groups. So there is a reason, I believe, that there's only 5 partners that the district has right at the moment, and those are our 5 Aboriginal groups. And so, somehow we need to put a plan together and a vehicle together to gather information that lasts a long time as well. A vehicle that has a feedback mechanism involved that can move us forward, and that will develop the trust so that when people get involved in that mechanism, whatever it looks like, feels like, whatever it is, that they trust that information can be used in a good way to support. And there's lots of things that the staff can do in listening to the board's work over time and to put things in place. We've taken a lot of direction over the last 2 or 3 years and just move forward with certain things. The province is giving us lots of direction as far as some things in the curriculum and things like that. So we've got lots of room to grow as the district grows in increasing sizes and et cetera, and be able to focus a little bit more. You know, as staff, we need to look at the system orientation parts of our policies and procedures reflective of what the board intends around reconciliation. So to develop that alignment all the way through. So staff has a lot of work to ensure that those types of things are happening. How do we involve our students in the growth of understanding, but also to get their feedback? How do we involve the partner groups, I think are some big pieces. So the trust, and trust only comes from effort and time. And possibly, as Trustee Brennan said, and probably not in the boardroom, you know. And so, you know, I think we need to make those steps forward in that direction. It's also, trust is developed by modeling. And, you know, the board has modeled that they're open and vulnerable to and trying to understand. And I think that's the first step. But then steps after that are then how do you model moving forward? And one of the pieces of that will help us model and to grow understanding is we need to maybe to have it in place by the end of the year, some type of information process vehicle to bring things. And I suggest to the board that it's small steps, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's a gradual process, and whatever we develop, we want to make sure that we systemize it to such an effect that it's going to stay there for a long period of time, and it can be tweaked as we go on. So those are my only recommendations as far as what we do and how we do it. Staff is moving forward on a lot of the more technical things, and I would even say the elders part, the focus school kind of idea and philosophies and those types of things. We're taking on those initiatives already, but we certainly would welcome any information gathering process that would give us any other direction, because many of those things were just done from our own initiatives, and we would far rather have it as partners solely involved and standing beside us as we move forward, because it makes it a lot easier for sure that way. Those are my only points.
Thank you. Trustee Robinson?
Thank you. The superintendent stole some of my fire too, so.
A bunch of thieves around here.
What's that?
A bunch of thieves around here.
Yeah, yeah. What I was, one of the main things I wanted to say is that as I talk to senior managers in here, there's complete 100% support for where we are trying to go. Certainly the board, there's 100% support. And teachers that I have talked to, especially the teachers at Bayview, I've mentioned a couple of times at their, they did an open school event near the beginning of school. It had been 5 years since I'd been in that school, and the difference in parents who were attending, the majority were Aboriginal First Nations people. So teachers in that school are obviously doing a job, and I believe if we're going to make an impact and move forward with this, it's the teachers that are going to do it. It's on the ground. We're educators. It's in our system. Yes, we need to reach out to various partner groups and bring in elders and so on, but it's continuing to encourage our teachers to build pride of culture, to build pride of language, to build self-esteem and self-confidence, to help those kids develop a vision not of nobody in my family has ever graduated high school, why should I? But to create a vision of not only high school, but damn it, you know, there's free education up at VIU. I could become a teacher in this system. And that's what we need, is more of those kids becoming teachers. I've spoken.
Thank you.
Can I have one last thought?
Books are too expensive.
Yes.
I completely agree with what Mr. Robinson said. I think what we have to be careful of, whenever we say, because I've said, because this happens a lot, whenever we say, well, it's up to teachers, it's on the ground, that's true, because they are the people who have the closest contact to have relationships with kids. But we have to have it emanate our whole culture within our system. And if we're going to be asking teachers around language and around some of those things, some of the things like self-esteem, that's just who you are. But some of the things that you talked about, that Trustee Robinson mentioned, which I think we should be doing, like language and that, they involve resources, and supports. So we have to make sure that if we're putting that on teachers, that they have the supports and the resources they need to do that. Yeah.
So I guess I have just one final comment. Just kind of going to steal from Trustee Brennan, his idea of the feast. And I think that is a big integral part of Coast Salish culture. And you mentioned shame, a way to address the shame of history. And although that whole concept doesn't seem to really, it's maybe hard to grasp it, but for every wrongdoing within a First Nations culture or community, if there was a wrong done, they have a ceremony to wash away the shame. And Coast Salish people do have ceremonies that do that, and there are, I like your idea about talking to our community members and getting an idea from them on what that would look like, how they would like to see that. And it could be a symbolic learning opportunity for our school district and our community. So I really like that idea. Just wanted to really acknowledge that. And if you ever have a chance to go to the museum down in Victoria, there's totem poles, and one of the totem poles has minks on the totem pole, and then the story that is connected to that totem pole talks about how mink was used as a way to wash away shame. So the further we explore the ideas of ways to address that, I'm sure that our communities will have some ideas on how to make a plan. So, Stephanie, did you have any other following comments?
Well, I guess I do, actually, just before you move on. Thank you for asking me. The one thing that I'm wondering about is if, this was an education committee as a whole. We made that motion in June, and I'm wondering if our partners and stakeholders sitting at the table have anything they would like to add about the process so far and about next steps. I mean, this is really not just about the board, but also about our whole entire district-wide community moving through this process together, and I wondered if they had anything they would like to add so far.
Good question.
Shannon?
I think there's been a tremendous amount of interesting comments and response to the activity that you participated in, and I unfortunately wasn't able to attend. And the ones that I've really going to go back and highlight are all the things that I've written down. The ones that I've highlighted are the ones that have to do with connecting with the communities and asking them what their needs are. And the ones that Natasha, you brought up, looking at the data and seeing what we're at, which I probably suspect we already know because we're really good at looking at that. And thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, well.
Just one mention, and I assume Mrs. Frey won't mind me mentioning that on November 20th at 1:45, there will be a blanket exercise at Georgia, and I'm sure if any of our trustees who haven't seen a blanket exercise would be welcome there.
Thank you. Okay.
And you won't just be watching.
Don't just see it.
Well, thank you everybody for your comments and suggestions and thoughts. And I guess at this time we'll move along down to 9.1, Assistant Superintendent Slipper, or the team.
Where's that Bob guy, Dr. Bob?
Did he skip out on this list?
No, I never.
Ever since he got his doctorate.
So I'll introduce, it looks like the team leader here in Bob's team around sexual health, Robin Cook. Kemp, sorry.
It's okay.
Excuse me.
I've had many names in this school district, and Kemp is the final one.
Yeah, and I should know better as well. and welcome. And we're excited. I'm excited to be able to listen to you today because I know the new initiatives and et cetera. And I know all three of you, but I hope you introduce everybody for us as well.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. Just to say that it's unusual for us to be here without Bob standing around, so it's like wherever you are, Bob, we'll do our best to do you proud and at best not to embarrass you. So there we go. He said he would be watching. First of all, I just would like to make a comment that I wish that as an individual and from the position of advocacy that and equity I could have been a part of, and it's seeing all of that, what you've done around reconciliation, because we're in a very challenging time, but we're in a very exciting time. I think that what I would like to say is, so the startup, which was, we support reconciliation, but what does that look like? So I'm going to take that jump and say, we support inclusion, but what does that look like? And that's kind of where we're at and around social justice. So on March the 8th, we were in attendance at another education board meeting, and we were in the audience, and Bob Essinger was doing a presentation, and there was a question from Trustee Ray, and that asked sort of what is the focus of social justice, and what are they focusing on? And then Bob talked about the two policies that we have been intimately involved with. One of them is sexual orientation and gender identity. And the other one, he talked about challenging racism, and it's about honoring diversity and challenging racism. And so, what focus was put on what, and we were in the audience and we wanted to jump up and answer the question, and we didn't get a chance to. So I just want to go through a little bit about where we've been and what we've done, so that we can sort of look at that focus, where it comes through our equity lens. And so part of the changes for us when we looked at our sexual orientation and gender identity procedure, that in July 25th in 2016, the BC Human Rights Act changed to include sexual orientation and gender identity along with other human rights, which made it incumbent on us to start looking at how does that law apply to us in schools, and what does that really mean? And at the same time, UBC was in partnership with an ARC Foundation and started a movement within our province to look at sexual orientation and gender identity, and what does that mean as we start that educational process into our schools. So they had, we were invited because of our inclusion policy to be a part of that. We were one of 7 original districts, and it ended up being 9. And we participated in a pilot last year. And from that pilot, we got some money. So we had a grant from them. We had a grant from We applied for a grant from the NDTA, which we got, and then the BCTF, didn't they match the grant and then added more to it?
They quadrupled it.
Quadrupled the grant.
BCTF did.
So because of all of those initiatives, we were able to do a lot around education pieces and the celebration and the honoring diversity in relationship to around sexual orientation and gender identity. So it was a big focus for us. At the same time, I think that Bob mentioned, and we're going to mention it again tonight, we were also doing some pieces around the honoring diversity in relationship to our new Syrian Canadian students who are coming into our school district, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But so why LGBTQ and why the focus? There were a lot of things that really came into play around what we did last year. And in June, our LGBTQ kids, that is really clear. We used the McCreary report. We depended on this foundation for years to supply us with data about youth in our province. So what we know is that our LGBTQ kids, our youth, are the most at risk for suicide, for homelessness, and for sexual exploitation. So at the end, when we had our Pride Parade, it was the biggest Pride Parade in Nanaimo to date. We were there for the second year in a row with our school bus, and we were walking alongside of us. We had school personnel, we had staff, we had parents, we had elementary and secondary students, and it was amazing. And at the end of it, when someone said to me, I was asked, so what do you think that was all about for this year? And my comment was, I think we might have saved a few lives. And I really believe that the focus that we were able to put, because of all of those things that came together, was like the perfect storm of money, focus, the Human Rights Act, that we were able to do that.
And we actually got letters from former students that saw us in the Pride Parade, just thanking us for that shift in making schools that much more welcoming for kids that they were never able to experience when they were in school.
So that was big for us. So this year, a couple of the things that we're looking at is a couple of partnerships. So last year we had a partnership with VIU, the high school, in relationship to 6 of our Syrian students who came into our system between the ages of 15 and 17. And what we were able to do with them is they actually invited us to look at how they could support these new Canadian kids coming in around their English language acquisition, given that if they didn't get that in a hurry, they were going to age out for school. So last year we had 6 students who went up to, from our system, who went up to VIU, the high school. And what they have there is they have 3 blocks every day of English immersion language. And it's been amazing to watch those kids. 3 of them have now come back into our system, the 3 of the youngest. 3 of the oldest they were able to keep for another semester. When we talked about why were they, I mean, this is a fairly expensive school, and they base a lot of it on funding from families, and also they have scholarships. And so the conversation was sort of, well, how come? And they said, because it's the right thing to do. So we worked with senior management, had many conversations with Scott Saywell, and about this and what that would look like. Anyway, we transferred those kids out there. Some of them are back. 3 of them are still there, and they're going on 2 programs straight into VIU. So it's really exciting. So this year, we had the invitation to come back and have the same conversation. So I went back to Scott and said, what do you think about this? What does it sound like to you? And so we're engaging now in a conversation about looking at a partnership between VIU and the high school at VIU, and also with their fundraising, and looking at how they can start to provide scholarships for kids who come into who are of our school age, but be able to give them really high quality English immersion, so that some of them will come back into our schools and they will pick up their maths and their sciences, having acquired English. or some of them will go on to another kind of post-secondary training or programs through BIU. So we're really excited about that. And again, why? These kids are, they're not international kids who are just coming to our community to have an experience. These are youth that are going to be and are becoming part of the fabric of our community and our society. And they're hardworking, they're fun, and they and their families are so appreciative of the fact that their kids can get that immersion in English. It would be nice if we could do it in our high schools, but we can't, not right now. But to be able to work in partnership to be able to provide that opportunity is pretty exciting as far as we're concerned. So keep your fingers crossed. We may be able to do amazing things, we hope. And just a little bit about one more piece about the Syrian students and the Eritrean students who come in. You know, most of them have been a minimum of 2 years in refugee camps. And during their time in the refugee camps and in their transition time, they didn't get any school whatsoever. They also don't get a lot of formal schooling where they were, and they're coming here to a more formal schooling atmosphere. And even in their learning of English and the written language, they work from right to left. We work from left to right. And so it's so different for them coming here, and yet it's so important for them to be able to have that foundation, those foundational pieces, so that they can move forward in their lives. And this is my last piece for a moment. A little linking up with what Trustee Solomon said about kids in care. So last year, we really wanted to be able to look at, we were looking again back at McCurry and the data for youth in care and graduation. And it's not great, and we know that. And so when we started to look at it last year, other things came from our limited time, moved forward more. But this year we had it on our to-do list to start looking at it. And just recently, I don't know if any of you are aware, but the minister of what is it called? The representative for child and youth in the province has just set out a news release as of October the 26th, 2017. And it says, British Columbia children and youth in care need better support to succeed in school. And so it's come forward. It's another one of our very marginalized children in our school. And so the data is really clear about their graduation rates and their ability to be successful in school completion. And so there's a room for improvement. So it's from this branch of the ministry. So it's going to be very much for us to grapple with. And somebody talked about data a couple times, and they have lots of data, and I think we need to be really cognizant of what that looks like in our school district, and how we can support those kids. So we are also we have made a connection with VIU with their program where they're paying for, first of all, the first wave of paying for education for youth that have been in care was those who were graduating or leaving school in care, and they were able then to go tuition fee up to VIU. Now the government has made a change, and what they're doing is for any youth that has been 2 years in care, they will have their tuition will be paid for in post-secondary education. But what we know is that there's lots of our kids who have been in care, who are in our system, who are now out of care, but we don't know how they're going to find out how they qualify for this. So we're going to start working with them and with VIU to put a process in place around what we can do to support those kids in moving and having some hope that they will be able to move into post-secondary education and will be available, at least for the 4 years that this government's in place.
Okay, so sorry, Karen, you're getting a little bit blinded over there, but turned on the screens. I'm Carl Pavan. I'm the other half of the social justice advocate team. Unfortunately, our social justice EA, that works with us. Natalie Price isn't able to be here with us tonight. She's got another job, so she's there tonight. But what I'm about to show you is a bunch of work that she has done with our website. So I just wanted to start with the main school district page so you know how to find this, because you go to our main page, you go to programs, and then look, there it is down here, social justice. Did you know it was there? It just got there. I was so surprised a few weeks ago. I was seeing it for the first time along with a whole group of other people. So Natalie's been working really hard. It's definitely a work in progress. But you can see here, she's got an incredible amount of stuff that we've worked together to provide her to build this webpage. So the homepage here has a variety of things. There's articles for anybody. So this is accessible to the public. It's for staff, it's for students, it's for teachers, it's for trustees, it's for anybody who wants to access it, community members. There's articles along the side here that we just think are important that are linked with our work for people to check out. There's our contact information. There's some little blurbs about a few different things. And then of course across the top here we have our tabs for policies and procedures. So it's easy for us to refer anybody who's asking where to find our very important associated policies and procedures. Of course, with the umbrella policy of being inclusion and the other ones that fall underneath it. We've also got resources here. And so I just wanted to take a moment to show you, because I don't know how well Trustee Higginson can hear us over here at the podium. I hope she can hear us all right, but she is in a very awesome new set of videos. So if you go here under SOGI, Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, you can check out SOGI 123, which is a website that's been built collaboratively by the districts that were in the pilot project last year. They now have Alberta along as well, so you have to choose BC. But if you go to the main page here and you click Pro D, they have this incredible array of Learning Burst videos, so short videos, which include Trustee Higginson, as well as Robin and I in the background.
And Lisa.
If I can get this to scroll down here. So you can check them out. They're awesome. If you have a meeting that you want to just share a few little tidbits with your colleagues, these are just short 5-minute learning bursts. And then for PLCs, we have 40-minute learning modules. They're completely developed with feedback from all of the pilot districts that are there. We did one, Natalie and I did one at McGurr on Monday, and it was very well received. We did this one, the SOGI Q&A. And they feature Bob Eslinger, Stephanie Higginson, Natalie Price has a speaking part in it, and like I said, me and Robin and Lisa are
chatting in the background.
And we're on the B-roll in a few spots. Our speaking parts didn't make it in. But it's a great place to go for more information on that particular piece. And then I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the current work that's going on associated with our school-based inclusion advocates. So some of you may have heard of our school-based inclusion advocates. It's a volunteer role that we ask a teacher or staff member in every school to take on. Last year we released a teacher from almost every school to come and get some training from us. And this year we're trying to focus particularly on privilege and intersectionality. And so in your packages you'll see a handout from the BCTF. It's called the Power Wheel, and it's got the different types of privilege on there. And so I just want to bring your attention to the fact that privilege is a hot button issue, right? White privilege, that term often gets people's backs up right away. And so there's a video on our blog here. So if you noticed, I went to news and announcements, and it drops down to show some options, and one of them is the vlog, V-L-O-G. And this video right here is from MTV, a program called Decoded, and it's called Why Does Privilege Make People So Mad? And it's a really great little deconstruction of what privilege is and what it isn't, so that when you look at the Power Wheel, you don't become indignant or offended and closed off to learning about what it means. And that's just where I wanted to spend a couple moments reflecting on some of the conversation that's been happening, and it's hard to sit in the audience and not get to contribute sometimes, because it's such a passion and such a close to my heart issue of reconciliation, and it's so linked with so much of what we do in social justice. And so privilege and racism go hand in hand in many ways. And what we're trying to do in our work as social justice advocates, as well as in my role as Aboriginal Enhancement Coordinator, is to really like take a step back, right? A lot of our work is around the operational stuff, right? Getting people to do their lessons, getting people to incorporate all these different things, but taking a step back and understanding why it is we do the things that we do, why it is that we create systems that are exclusive, unknowingly. And privilege is a big part of that. And cultural safety, which is something that we've talked to you about in the past, is another really big piece of that. And that really connects with all of the conversation that we've been having, in that we're not putting the burden on the marginalized people to figure this out. It's about us being professionals, being the people who are running these things, taking some of the responsibility on ourselves and saying, we know right from wrong, we know how to do things better going forward. Let's examine what it is in our societies, in our systems, in us, that has resulted in these things happening and continuing to this day. And so whether it's reconciliation or cultural safety or privilege or whatever it is, it's about looking inward, right? It's about finding out, what is it about me? What is it about the way that I exist in the world that I can relook at to make sure that I am being as culturally safe, as being as inclusive, being as reconciliatory as possible. Because without that piece, the process doesn't move forward in the way that it is going to need to actually solve it. So I've gone a little rogue up with my talk here. These are big shifts, right? We have big shifts in curriculum and assessment, and they're all connected because this is part of that conversation as well. And Robin and I get to do it in one day a week. We get to do our best.
So one of the phrases that you've heard us use in every single one of our presentations to you is that diversity exists, inclusion does not. And it's created through ongoing, open, honest, and courageous conversations. And so this year, as we've started our work, we are challenging people to have those courageous conversations. Because without those conversations that make people feel uncomfortable, we don't move anywhere. And we do need to do that in a very respectful way. But we need to talk about what's not been talked about. And we need to come to some kind of agreement about how we're going to do that, if we really want to move forward in looking at truly honoring diversity and looking at inclusion in that big picture. So again, you've heard us say that one. So can I want me to do this one too? There's another slide that we always have put up. And it comes again from Musa Magasa, who is the human rights person at UVic, and we spent a lot of time with him in our very first year before we even started looking at the policy. And it says that, we've said it before, I'll say it again, inclusive practices are everybody's responsibility and yet must be championed by the leadership of an organization. It is the job of advocates and frontline people to hold leaders accountable and remind them of their commitment. And so as I was listening to your conversations about reconciliation, it's really heartwarming to hear that commitment. And we just want to, I guess, feel that support around all of inclusion. And what would that look like? What would that actually look like? So in your handout, if you look at a couple of things that we put in, there's a place at the very back, the one at the very back on page 11 and 12, and it looks like an inclusive school environment. So we know that many of you go into your schools and meet up with people there. So maybe the next time you go in, if you could take that with you, take this with you, and just have a look around. When you walk in, do you see the inclusion policy? Is it visible? Is it welcoming to diversity? Is there posters up? What does it look like? So, so this is just like a little cheat sheet for you to take with you when you go into your schools, and just look at around how inclusion and honoring diversity is not just talked about, but is it visualized.
Just going to get Natalie's website up here. Yeah, feel free to ask some questions.
I have a question, two questions, I guess one question. So these two questionnaires then, the one on page 10,
yeah,
school climate one, and the the school climate, the one. So are you using these all with students?
What we've done is we've given these same questionnaires to our inclusion advocates. So we've asked them to take them back to schools. And so what it is that you ask the teachers these questions, and then you ask the students these questions. And then you see how closely they're aligned. Because our experiences have been that staff have one view, and students have another view. And that becomes one of those courageous conversations when you start to look at, so how do we align this? How do we reconcile that discrepancy?
Because I started visiting some of our QSAs, and they would like to sit down with us and sit down with the board and say, here's what's going well, here's where we could do better.
Yeah, and we listen. Yeah.
It's an ongoing process.
It's an ongoing
right.
process.
That's our catchphrase, right? Is diversity exists, inclusion doesn't. It only exist through ongoing, open, honest, courageous conversations, and they never stop.
So we have another question from our DPAC, Charlene.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm wondering, and this may not be for our presenters, on the student and parent area of the website, if we could have a direct link to the social justice page, I think that would be really helpful. Because often there are things that are there that overlap, but I think sometimes if it was very clearly laid out, I think it's something that students and parents would access. But they're probably going to click that student and parent tab first, as opposed to the buildings. So just easier access.
It is something that you have to direct people to. They don't find it on their own.
Yeah, so that would help. Just okay.
Thank you.
Natasha, can you put me on the list, please?
For sure. Go ahead, Trustee Higginson.
Oh, that was quick. I don't have a question, and I know I'm supposed to, but I just really, really want to extend my gratitude, and I think that of the board, to the work that our social justice advocates do on their point 2. As we saw last week with the headlines, this is very, very important work, and sometimes we forget how much there is still to do because we are surrounded by like-minded friends and folks. And I know that you guys put in well more time than your point 2 to this. And you know, the bottom line is that our job is to improve student achievement, and we know students can't learn if they don't feel safe. And you know, I'm very, very grateful for the work you guys are doing to make sure that our schools are safe and inclusive environments. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do you have some more to share with us?
We'll let Natalie take it away here.
Yeah, thank you. And then we'll be back for one more.
So everyone should have one of these packages. I'll be referring to it as we go. So I do have the best job in the world, and it's a job I didn't know even existed when I was a high school student here at NDSS in the 90s. But my job is to coach teachers and to train teachers and to talk to kids about really important things like their bodies, how they interact with other people, how to have healthy relationships, and how to reduce things like risk and harm. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, because the only way we can move forward is to know where we are and where we've come from. So I have a background being trained from Options for Sexual Health, and I've been teaching sexual health for over 10 years. And I've heard other people say, you're still learning, and so am I. I'm always learning. Sexual health is a curriculum that's always evolving. The BCTF was one of the first advocates for sexual health being added to the curriculum in 1969. Not until the 1990s was there more comprehensive health education integrated into dedicated classes like personal planning and health and career education. But BC should be proud to have the most comprehensive sexual health curriculum in the whole country. That gives us an opportunity to really educate our students. Unfortunately, a lot of the curriculum is not taught by the regular classroom teacher, but it is mandated from kindergarten all the way to grade 10. When a student is taught about their body, they're more likely to get out of abusive situations. Research shows that abusers tend to target children who know little about their bodies. When students are not taught from a young age by a safe adult in the classroom or a safe adult at their school, and they get to grade 6 or 7 and they hear body parts for the first time, it's really hard to get past the giggling and to get the real learning to come across if it hasn't been built upon each year. We know that if students don't get accurate information at school, they often go to pornography to get their ideas about what healthy relationships are, and that's the opposite of what they would see in pornography. If you look at your package, I've given you a handout of what our students have to gain when we follow through with quality sexual health. I'm going to highlight 3 of those for you. So with quality sexual health education, we directly impact the ability to stop sexual abuse. And when we think in statistics, approximately 1 in 10 of our students are or will be sexually abused by the time they hit 17 years old. So in a class of 30 kids, you can think about the numbers there. So these are our students we're talking about. Sexual health education in school is correlated to people waiting longer before they have sex. And we know that sexual health education in school is correlated with developing a sense of belonging and identity with our most marginalized students. So some of the barriers that we have to quality sexual health in our district we need to address so we can move forward. Most teachers feel unprepared because they're untrained. No teachers leave university with any training in sexual health education. That makes them feel uncomfortable with the complex curriculum that it is. In-service and training is not consistent yet, and it's very difficult to find things like professional development around sexual health. Not all students in schools have received the same aspects of sexual health curriculum, and a lot of that is due to the cost of bringing in outside providers, which often the PACs have been paying for. And other barriers like finding a place to teach. We know that PE teachers, when they have to deliver sexual health, they need a quiet, safe classroom that's contained to be able to really get into this complex curriculum. And we know that another barrier is updates and the evolution, how the curriculum often changes and evolves, and lessons are often taught in a heteronormative or heterosexual or cisgender context. So we need to give teachers capacity building around the ever-changing language and content that needs to be delivered. We know that some students are graduating without getting the lessons that they ought to receive. So we need to think about what the accountability is and how can we make sure that every student is getting what is mandated. When we don't do the job that is expected of us, we see a ripple effect into our community health as well. And the health of our partners, the health system, people's relationships. You may be surprised, but this is a good finding, is that the majority of parents are overwhelmingly supportive of comprehensive sexual health in schools. According to the Sexual Information Education Council of Canada, it's a whopping 91% of parents are supportive of sexual health education. And we know that DPAC and the PACs, among others, were instrumental in supporting the role that I am in as a district coordinator. So we know that the curriculum needs to be age appropriate, and it needs to be taught in steps starting in kindergarten. It needs to be up to date and accurate, and it needs to be inclusive of all bodies and all families. If we just think about our families that we have in our community, research shows that only 50% of families are the traditional nuclear family of a mother and a father and children. So that leaves the other 50%, maybe they aren't represented in the lessons and in the language of the teacher if they don't know how. We know that according to the McCreary study, 19% of our youth report not being completely straight. So that's close to 20% of our students that identify as LGBTQ+. The most important thing, according to the Canadian Guidelines for Sexual Health, is that this curriculum is delivered by trained, confident, unbiased educators. So this is an area where we can really work with our teachers. So as I mentioned before, the current state has changed because sexual health was in dedicated classes like health and career and planning, but now it's being moved to physical education. So the new name is called physical health education, and up to 20% of physical health education curriculum is actually personal and sexual health. So the challenges of that are, how do we support teachers with the classroom, a dedicated classroom? They're looking for a more prescriptive approach of how much time should we dedicate to sexual health. They need some guidance with that. And there also are concerns about, there's a bit of resistance because teachers are worried about losing physical activity time. It's such a crucial time for students to get them moving. And of course their concerns are they're going to be moving less if they're sitting in the classroom. But these are all the barriers that we need to acknowledge so we can really help teachers. So historically, schools have relied on trained experts and trained facilitators to teach this curriculum. For example, Steps to Maturity, we had trained educators. The Care Kit required training. Options for Sexual Health was a paid outside facilitator who was trained. In our district, we rely on other educators like Dr. Claire, Carrie Isham, and others who are trained experts. And in my position, I'm a trained expert, but I am a 0.6 3-days-a-week job supporting all the schools. So I like to leave this analogy because I propose a hybrid model that we really need to support, where we have experts and then we have teachers teaching the baseline lessons. So trained experts are like doctors. There's always a need for them to come in once in a while for the complex procedures or surgeries or challenging lessons, who keep us up to date and model their teaching. Our job is also to train teachers, like nurses, who are the frontline workers, who can ensure the baseline lessons are weaved in throughout the year and are taught in every class, in every grade, to every student, so that we have equity. So every student is receiving quality health education. So in your package, there's a second handout. I'm going to refer to the projects to support best practice. So if we know what the best practice is with sexual health, I have 9 recommendations. And you can go through those more in detail. We can go through those later, but I just wanted to highlight a few. So we know that we need to support and coordinate programs at a district level. So we need to probably ideally expand the coordination role so that we can do more teacher training, implement district procedures like the inclusion and social policy procedure, really have an elementary team and a secondary team approach. We need to have a district-wide approach where all teachers are using a program like Kids in the Know. So I'm just going to hold this up. We purchased this program for the district, and we are starting to train teachers in this program. We started last week and we're continuing tomorrow. My goal is to get every teacher to teach about 6 or 7 base lessons on topics that are a little bit easier to address, like friendships, healthy relationships, feelings and emotions, a little bit of mental health, and then it touches on important topics like exploitation and safe use of technology and social media. So if we got all teachers to do the baseline, there's still going to be that need for an expert approach to deal with the more difficult topics like sexual identity, gender, orientation, sexually transmitted infection prevention, pregnancy prevention, puberty. Sometimes those are, teachers can decide what is, their comfort zone, and we can train them, and then we can always use the expert to supplement. We know we need to train teachers more, and I also want to make sure that we continue this conversation with universities, because in the universities they do not prepare the teachers to deliver this, and this is their job once they get into the school. So how can we have a relationship with the universities so we can better equip our new teachers? In your package, I talk about, I try to supply teachers with tools and resources. So I made a chart that is for K to 7, and it talks about what the curriculum is, how Kids in the Know can support that curriculum, and what books they can use. Storybooks, because storybooks are great social stories to introduce really difficult concepts, so what books they can use to supplement their curriculum. So you'll find that in a chart format. Some other things that we're working on is increasing transparency, especially among parents. We want to make sure that parents are supporting their students and getting the information they need in an easy way. So I'm starting with this website, and it's just at the beginning stages, but it's going to have a section for kids, preteens and teens, where I can direct them right to this website, or teachers can, so they don't have to use Google to search really interesting topics. It's all right here in a safe way. So this will be populated with that second package I gave you. It's called the cheat sheet for grade 8 to 12. It has the main components that students need to know about all these topics, and it has safe, reliable resources to get their information from. And then we'll have a parent section that'll help parents know what their child needs to know at what age so they can continue the conversation at home, and other parent resources. And we'll also have an educator section where teachers can go here to find reliable lessons, understand what it is they need to teach, and look for training opportunities. And this will also be a place where people can get help. I'll just show you this. Sometimes we have so many services, but we don't know where to go when we need them. So I'm hoping to get students to use this as a tool if they need help with any of these sometimes difficult situations they come across. So this is at the beginning stages, and it's something that I look forward to working on more. So I'll leave you with my conclusion here. So we know how important this education is. It's some of the most important lessons that students will ever receive. And it's also our duty because this curriculum is mandated. So if we know what is required and we know what the barriers are, how can we overcome those barriers? I have my suggestions, and I hope to work with the district to make every teacher equipped to deliver high quality sexual health education. So I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks.
Do you have any questions?
My apologies, I have to leave. Okay.
Oh, you have to leave? Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Brozovich, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. With the use of the outside experts that have been brought in various times in the district, what can we do? What have we been doing, or what have we been doing to ensure that there's consistency? Mm-hmm. Because from what I've heard from various parents who've been at more than one school and they've had different outside people coming in, some of them teach it very differently.
Yes,
that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. It's just
right now the outside providers are doing a really important service because they're making sure that students aren't falling through the cracks, right? So I have to acknowledge that, and they're an important part at this point until we've really trained our educators. There is a really clear curriculum, and it's if facilitators come into schools, then administrators have the responsibility to make sure that the presenter is teaching the curriculum.
okay. So basically,
Superintendent Wynn.
Thank you, and just to follow up on Natalie's point, Natalie's a part of that consistency.
Cool.
This position was created to begin that process of working with teachers and et cetera about the scope and sequence of curriculum and et cetera. And certainly it will grow as we move along. I understand many teachers in elementary right now, and secondary I know, but are embarking on the instruction that you're giving them, and they really appreciate the packages and the support. So, but as she said in the past, this is the beginning point. In order to bring it about into a full, to its full potential, it's going to take time and more Natalies and all those types of things. It's very similar to the very beginnings of social justice and inclusion.
Anybody else? Trustee Ray?
Thank you. Thank you all for your presentations. I just have a question about the social media aspect of it, and I know we're in the infancy stage of this, but what are we doing in the schools today to help our kids understand where they can go on SD68 to find out that information? Is that happening in the classrooms where we have something like this brought up, and so the kids know where to go and how to get there? They seem to relate to not guys like Bill and my age. We don't relate to that kind of stuff, but
Play tablets.
yeah. But they seem to relate to this kind of stuff. So I was just curious if we're getting out with that message to the kids at a grassroots
I
level.
was just working at a high school yesterday, and they were really interested in that cheat sheet I gave you, because they want to do a little bit of project-based learning. So what they would do is they would give the students an assignment and then direct the student to this website once it's live, because we're getting there. And so that's where I would tell the teachers, I'd model to the teachers, get teachers using it regularly, and then they can get their students too. And I just want to show you, if anyone's on Facebook, I have a link right here at the top right to a page I run, because I find this is an easy way to connect with people and post relevant things in a quick way. So this is the my personal and sexual health page, I guess, and here it has relevant documents, books that teachers could use. It has videos that people can use in the class the next day, sexual abuse prevention strategies. So this is what I found to be more accessible at this point, but once I get the website live, then I'm going to be using that. So if anybody wants to follow it, the website is at the top. It's called, you just go into Facebook and type in SD68PHE.
Just as a follow-up, when do you expect that these web pages will go live?
Yeah.
Ours is.
I'm challenged with the amount of time I have to dedicate, because I'm a 0.6 and I have to really support all the schools. So this is I'm trying, and it should be, I'd say, soon.
Okay. Stand by.
Stand by.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we have a question from Charlene.
Thank you. Thank you. I always appreciate your time. When we talk about bringing in or supplementing more challenging topics with experts, I guess my question is more hypothetically for the board to consider. I think in order to provide this equitably after the 5+ years that I've been involved in this subject, would be to ask you to consider how the district can provide that equitably if it's coming from an outside source. So if we want experts, and we clearly have the capacity within our district to find people like Natalie who have the training and have the skills, or are interested in obtaining the training and the skills to get there. My hypothetical question, maybe not so hypothetical, is can you put this in the back of your mind for budget time to think about developing this area of our district to make sure that every student in every classroom has the supports they need, and not just for our students but also for our teachers, because when we do get into the touchy, hard stuff to teach, we get it. An expert is helpful. But a 0.6 sure only goes so far to help our kids and our students. So I'm asking that you keep that in mind for later.
I guess through the chair to respond to that, and forgive my ignorance, is this something that we see as there's so many ways to deliver the message now through different kinds of technologies, and if we have an expert, we can Skype them into each school at the same time, or is it something that needs to be a face-to-face thing? Is it, there's different ways to, in my other job I work in a company that is based all over the world, and we have conversations on a daily basis around the world. The world's a lot smaller place than it used to be via technology. So is this something that we can use technology to deliver the message quicker, or is it important that it is something that's done face to face? And I'm not looking for anybody to answer that right now, but just something to ponder, I guess.
Can I respond?
Oh, please.
Just my insight is that there are things that we could do to make it more accessible through like videos and such, but it's such sensitive matter and such important conversations that the kids really value being able to ask you a question and look at you in the eye and get your neutral face answer. That's the most valuable part of this job. So I don't think technology will ever replace that, but there's definitely a role for technology to play.
Thank you.
Shannon?
Thank you. So through the chair, I don't think anyone could have done a more comprehensive and insightful presentation than Natalie's has just done. And the piece about resources is so important. I don't know, as we've done a really comprehensive survey to find out what is being done in the classroom. I can speak for myself what I did in the classroom, but if that's not fair, I have to speak for all teachers. And I think many do attack parts of the curriculum, and but for sure some are probably not doing what they should do, and there's various reasons for that. This is a really sensitive area. This might be very difficult for some teachers to tackle for whatever reason. And that expert knowledge, that training, that unbiased ability to look at this and deliver what's needed for the students is really critical. So I would really hope that you would consider Charlene's point about looking at this during budget time and recognizing that it's a very important area, and develop that expertise that the district needs, as well as the resources for so many other areas.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Nope.
You're coming back.
Can I leave you with one more thought? A short story of two, actually, but short one. It's about my dad. So growing up with my family, my dad is alcoholic, and he, because my mom forced him to, he went to AA meetings, and he would go, and he would talk about being sober and how that looked like for him, and then he would fall off the wagon, and my mom would nag him some more, and he would go back to the meeting, and he would never tell anybody that he fell off the wagon. He'd just go back. He was a good talker, and he would talk the talk. And he did that for years. And then he eventually fell off the wagon, and he ended up at a treatment center. He came back from a treatment center, and that by this time I'm an adult, and I'm having a conversation with him. And he said, you know, when I was really sort of, before I got into recovery, I could talk and talk and talk. I could talk that talk, and I thought that if I talked louder and I talked faster, that I'd never have to say that I wasn't walking my walk. And when I came back from here, it was about, I need to walk my walk. And that's the courageous conversation that we want you to have about that. We have so many amazing initiatives happening in our school district. And I would like to suggest that in lots of places we probably are leading the province in those conversations and in what the work. But now we want to see how together we can start walking the walk. And I think that's where you're talking about reconciliation. And I think that this is what we're asking when we look at, we're a team, and our job is really about student safety, that sense of belonging, that they feel safe in our schools. So, yeah, or we could just go with Mahatma Gandhi, who said, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become your destiny. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Feel free to stay if you wish, or don't be shy to leave if you want to.
Nice to have former students.
Many of them, I'm sure. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
9.2 enrollment update, Superintendent Bain.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just waiting for Mr. Williams to prepare here.
Oh, I guess you're sharing. Oh, it's kind of like you're sharing. Just paper.
So I'm going to start, and Mobile will get ready for me. We're just going to put this up on the screen so you can see the ledger piece. But this information I'm about to share is for the board's information, and you'll probably take it away with you tonight, and then have some questions later. And I'm expecting more questions to come tonight. So we just completed the 1701. Kim Hart's department and finance has completed it. And these are the numbers as close as we can have that we put into the ministry. It's important that you understand some of this, again, is in head count and some of it is in FTE, but I'll give you kind of the Coles notes as we go through it. And then if at a later date the board would like other information or more distinct information, all you have to do is ask and we'll disseminate it out a little bit differently. So to begin with, you'll notice on the first page that's up on the board there are some highlighted pieces. I think the important piece that you will be interested in is if you look down to the second column. It's called Change from September 2016. From original 2016 FTE ministry, we have 307 students more unfunded students, 6 more international or francophone students to then be 313 more students in our system than we had last year. And the difference between what we worked on as our staffing formula and funding from February as our projections that is stated in the next row down, change from projection. The overall change was 194 difference, and we were using, when we were talking to the board about additional staffing and from projections and etc., we were using we ended up using 175, so that gave us a good round number to be working on, so that we weren't overstaffing or understaffing to what we thought was coming. So in the work that we did, that was an important number. So those are mostly all inclusive of our 10-month school programs. Okay, now we do have 12-month school programs that come to us in different ways and different funding. And so I just thought we'd talk about that, and that's the next box on the bottom, continuing education and Island Connect Ed. And you'll notice that there's some different columns again. FTE, we tried to maintain some FTE pieces for you here. But overall, between continuing ed, Island Connect Ed, we are overall 5.2 students more than we were last year. Now that is broken up into many different courses and all those types of things, and so it's not student bodies. But the important piece to you to know is that there is an increase there. We haven't seen a decrease. We're maintaining. We staff that separately in a way that it's a status quo staffing that we develop, and then we shift it as the year progresses along as to needs and whether or not there's increase or decrease and those types of things, because we get a different funding and it comes at different times a year, so it's not just based on a one-time funding of September the 30th. So if I use those numbers, if you just move to the next page, you'll see an elementary and secondary graph, and these numbers on the top blue is your elementary, and you'll notice 8452 is the number there, and you'll notice under September, on the first page, September head count, September 2017, under elementary, under funded, there's your 8452. So the numbers are consistent there, and you notice that elementary, again, as we were suspecting, we talked about in the past, is still inclining due to leveling off as the students clear through. And in the next 2 to 3 years, that level off period that this graph shows. And and then noticing the secondary is we're down near the bottom of the graph and beginning to move up, and that's the influx of our stronger elementary students moving up through the system. And that's all, as we can see graphically, that we will increase. The next one is just another visual of the overall full FTE of the district. This is using the head count. So these are numbers of bodies in our system. And we've tried to compare apples and apples. It was a little bit difficult, but as the years have gone along, but you'll notice that it goes back in the slow decline. And you can see that starting in 2014, the actual funded student number is beginning to rise. And there's a gradual rise until you see the 5-year period of all the elementaries hitting the system, and then you see the same plateau coming out of the tail end of that graph that is demonstrated in your elementary system 5 years, 6 years out. We thought that it would be interesting for you to just a visual. Kim put this together for us, and it's the kindergarten. And you can see that there's little ups and downs on a regular basis, but you can see the gradual incline. And again, you'll notice that it begins to plateau, okay, at the tail end of that graph, which is an important piece to us when we see whether or not we're into overall inclining for a longer period of time, or is it going to plateau? Now, certainly, immigration and the moving, Bear Rug takes into consideration a certain percentage of people moving into the area and those types of things. And if that percentage changes significantly to the incoming, then we would have to change that. But based on what we know now, that's fairly close. The last sheet here is what the board was interested in around the school sizes. You'll notice that we've got the kindergartens through grade 7 as to the divisions. And I'm just going to speak and do some clarification here. If you look in kind of the middle after it goes on along the top, kindergarten 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to SU, and then at head count, HC is head count, and funded FTE is FTE. You'll notice in elementary that those numbers are the same all the way through. That's because one student is one head count is one funded student in its entirety. You'll notice that in the secondary, below that changes a little bit. And you'll notice the percentages on the far right-hand side. Those are the calculations that we use that develop trends. The difference is because in grade 10, 11, 12 we're funded per student, per course, and not per student. So that's that shift that comes. And so some students don't take all 100% of the courses there, etc. And that develops our engagement trend for grade 10, 11, 12. And that's quite normal. And so that's why we rely on when the board funds the schools, the high schools, they're funded, you fund them as a full student. Okay, so head count is what they're funded on, and then the district works out the percentages and the funding per course. And so that allows principals at secondary a little bit of flexibility as to how they shift their staffing and et cetera. And it's a decision that is beneficial to the schools because it's additional staffing that actually those kids aren't in. It takes into consideration running an 8-block system to make sure that there's a block are going to seat for every student in every block. And then that allows for a little flexible and freedom there.
So just because I want to see if I'm learning this as we go along. If the head count is actually lower in secondary than the FTE, that's probably a scenario where a student is taking their regular course load plus doing a DL class?
Right.
Okay.
So a student could be counted as 105% or 110% depending on how many courses.
So that's the kid who wants to pick up a physics class?
Yeah, if a student were taking 9 blocks instead of 8,
Yeah.
so they're taking band outside the timetable, or they're taking they're blended with another course, taking it through Learning Home, or they're picking up a peer tutoring that is offered at different times.
So
Apprenticeships.
Okay, because I guess what I was confused about is I would think like if I were a student and I'm an ND student, I'm taking all my regular courses plus I'm picking up physics they're not offering this year, that would count as an Island Connect Ed, but it doesn't, it counts as NDSS.
It depends on which parts of that.
Okay,
but
so it's
yeah. But a student, for example, a grade 12 student who's graduating early in the second semester, they're only taking 4 courses, and in head count, in our count is 100%, but as far as courses that they're taking, they're only taking 4. So they would only be 4 out of 8. So that changes the numbers dramatically sometimes. Okay. And so, as far as enrollment, et cetera, for this year, we're solid into the area that we suggested we would be. We're still waiting for, of course, the funding to come. We just put in the 1701 pieces. One of the things that the board will probably need to be aware of, we're just about to go under a special ed audit as well. And they're coming in, and so some of the other pieces of the funding on special ed, we're going to be going through it in the next 2 to 3 weeks, which is very good for us. We're well prepared for it. We don't want to go through what we did a few years back. Some of the trustees raised their eyebrows.
Which was inevitable.
What's coming. But, and so those types of things are still at play, but, and so we're still waiting for the funding formula. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Blaine. Any other questions? Trustee Brennan?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the head count for Island Connect Ed, and it's high, 646 individuals, representing 220 FTEs. Now, I think that distance education, when it came along, was thought to be able to present quite a considerable advantage to young people to learn where they live, right? If they don't live in Nanaimo, they can learn through Nanaimo's distance ed program, being a Dogwood that way. I'm just wondering if it might be time to look at the value of distance learning programs with regard to the kind of social benefit that they provide to the district. Financially, I mean, I guess we get paid on the course, by the course. But children detached from the social benefits and the just the kind of camaraderie that is often the case in schools. Are we losing that to some degree by expanding opportunities for distance learning? There's certainly a need for it for some people, and particularly for some students who don't learn well in a closed room with a bunch of other kids. But I wonder about what we and they may be losing in terms of the development of a society.
Well, before I turn this over to Ms. Hart, if she has anything to add to it, I hear the question is a little bit higher level than the number itself. As the board may be aware, is that our Island Connect Ed is a little bit different than the other distant learnings in the sense that there are on-site activities and those types of things. So they're trying to keep the facial contact and that social awareness things as much as we can for those students. We're also not interested in going outside of our district. That was piece of the mandate that the board when we first initiated this, to make sure that it was focused on our students. So that allows us to do some different programming with those types of students, and they do. I know through Island Connect Ed, they do a lot of different social activities specifically to develop that, and we saw the presentation around that. So I think at any time, if the students are working in isolation, we're defeating some of the purposes of what public schools are about. But at the same time, I think also we're meeting many of the needs of the diversity of our students. And it comes in different forms. With, I think one of our successful pieces to this is kind of the connection of online learning to the bricks and mortar schools, and allowing students to take those other courses to gain that experience as well, and those skills of what an online learner must learn. The specialists of it really are Mr. Sable and Mrs. Hart on kind of the infancy in that, and then I'm not sure if they'd like to add anything to what Trustee Brennan has.
Yeah, I could, through the chair. Great question. We'll have about, by the end of the year, about 450 FTE students run through that program. I would say 300 FTE, which would represent maybe 1,500 students, accounts for students that are taking courses in their bricks and mortar high school, so they're cross-enrolled. And then there's probably 150 students total, grades K to 9, that are full-time students. Plus, in fact, a few hundred that are trying to graduate by getting their last course. To Superintendent Blaine's point, we do programming. It's a hybrid model, so even the students that are fully enrolled in Island Connect Ed, they have the opportunity of programming on every Tuesday and Thursday morning. So we bring them in, and a lot of those students who can't make it are engaged in all manner of other social activities. They're in dance programs or the like. So my personal concern as well about social emotional stability of some of these kids.
Trustee Ray?
I didn't. Just a question through you. That would there be an appetite to evaluate the program on the basis of the students, meeting the students' needs, and also a more kind of societal literature review kind of evaluation of whether distance programs actually do turn out, well-rounded citizens? I mean, it's a bit lofty, and I don't expect such a thing to be done
by tomorrow.
Yes.
I think all programs need to be reviewed to see if they're doing what they think they're doing. I have a concern about technology and kids being isolated by technology and the lure of technology and the addiction, pure addiction. The research is pretty clear on children who are addicted during their formative years, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, technology, Facebook, have an addiction for life. And it's harder to break that addiction when they get addicted in their formative years, because that's what they go to in times of trouble. I'm awfully concerned about that. I think there's a good study in that. And that relates to distance education.
Well, there was some research done with regard to children's time on screen and their dream behavior, and there's a reduction. It's found to be a reduction in child dreaming. And we had a moment with our granddaughter this morning with that, getting her away from the screen, and it resulted in a commotion.
Every adult in this room.
So say no, and no gets you a long morning.
Thank you. We have a comment by.
Yeah, just a quick thought on that, Trustee Brennan. It may be as you're well aware, it's a ministry directive too, and we just went through a review, an audit, and last year on our ICE program, et cetera, and it was very successful. And also, our success rates are very high, if not the same, higher than within the regular stream. But I wonder if it's something that the BCSTA can support in asking the ministry for some feedback around that and those types of pieces, right, at a higher level for discussion, because the ministry, it's a directive of the ministry, not necessarily that all districts have to have it, but it's supported, it's fully auditable. It's one of those programs that are completely within the realms of what a lot of districts are doing. So it may even be a higher level question about how we deliver our services around public education, and that it also kicks into that private school piece and all those pieces, right? Yeah, because we're always looking at how do we create diverse programs to attract all students, right? And that's our goal and kind of our mission, and so does that mean that we have an open playing field, or is there some confines that the ministry gives us, and that's called the curriculum and program development, that the ministry guidelines that they give us.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Good point. Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions for Superintendent Blaine, we have nothing for item number 10. No unfinished business, no new business. Do you have any questions?
I was asleep at the wheel when you asked if we had anything to add to the agenda. I'd like to add a small piece. At the open house at Bayview early in September, I was talking to a grade 3-4 teacher, and she was interested and felt the need of finding some way to motivate, encourage, inspire her students. So we chatted about various things. About a month ago, I woke up with this line, "The best me I can be." And the idea is to create a certificate which would be framed to give it value. The teacher would come up with 2 or 3 positive things that the student had accomplished. And by the end of the year, the concept is everyone will have got a framed certificate. So I've spoken with the principal at Bayview, and we're going to move forward with that as a pilot. And I've also spoken with Mrs. Frey about 2 grade 1-2 classes to pilot the program at that level. And I spoke with Dale some time ago about getting a certificate designed, and we're on our way with that. And I'd offered to pay for the frames, but Dale very kindly suggested the school district could come up. I think you can buy a frame.
Our budget?
You can buy a frame for $1 a piece. So, so that is open to any other trustee that would like to do a pilot. I think it'll be exciting for the students to have both a teacher and a trustee presenting, recognizing them for some piece of work well done. So it's there if anyone wants to use it.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. So if there's nothing else, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh.
Trustee Robinson, seconded by Trustee Crosby.